I'm here with Graham from Xspor. He's the founder of Xspor Australia, who deals with mold remediation, mold testing, and everything to do around that space. And it's been a massive actual focus point now in the building industry and bring like point of mind with people. So, Graham, thanks so much for coming in. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, look, Tim, thanks for the invite there. It's a growing industry, and an industry that hasn't had any sort of background scientific-wise for a long time. And to that point in 2001, in the FDA in America and in the Citrus Association over there, they had quite a problem with mould growth, where they used to lose up to 46% of their fruit and veg in transit and warehousing.
Yeah, wow.
So they pulled in scientists to do a study to find out what was the remedy to that type of thing, because obviously that's a lot of food, a lot of money. And they, over 3 years, dropped that back from 46% to just under 12%.
So this is sort of where that product
This
has
is
come
where this
from
is
and
all.
addressed.
This is where the mould remediation side of things using natural products started. So obviously being able to put this onto fruit and veg, whatever, it's a product that can be consumed. So they finished their work there, went to the FDA and said, look, we've found all these other properties that this can be used for. And they said, we don't care what you're going to do with that, long as you have solved our problem, which you have. So they then went out and formed a company to do more research, which was done at Yale, and they produced this product, which is an enzyme-based product with a natural plant extract surfactant to deliver the enzymes into porous surfaces, right? So it's delivered at a rate which is very, very small, 6 micron, and that allows it to go through a lot of different types of substrates, anything that's porous in actual fact, clothing, materials, carpets, gyprock, as I say, anything that's porous. And that attacks the mould. Mould in itself is made up, like the skeleton, I guess you could say, is chitin, and what these enzymes do is attack the chitin, and the actual. Just to understand about chitin, chitin's in seafood. That's what joins the segments of like a prawn together, where you see the shell. So what that does then, that breaks down the reproduction cycle of mould. So therefore you eliminate mould to its entirety. And then obviously from that, in eliminating that, you've got rid of the toxic value, the mycotoxins that are what are the health issues. So these guys from there went on to sort of do further studies to see what health issues that it was causing in people. And of course, as a lot of people are aware, you get all types of sinus type problems, you get itchy eyes, runny eyes and whatever. But the big issue that nobody was aware of, that when you actually breathe in these spores, you can get mould growth inside your lungs.
Yeah, wow.
And also ingested into your stomach. Of course, then there's quite a problem when because it gets into the bloodstream, and for whatever reason that it attacks at the brain level, and we've actually got licensees down the mid coast in New South Wales that have got tumours on their brain, within their brain, that can't be operated on, so they've got to go back and have treatment every 6 months, and this has all come from mould. So I'm not trying to, in explaining that, want to make people frightened about what this is. It's all controllable, but through all these tests starting in 2001, it's taken, I guess, nearly 2 decades for this to really get out through the general practitioners and doctors and whatever. So as when somebody turns up, say they're feeling ill and whatever, a doctor can at times say, well, is anybody else in the home ill? And they'll say, well, not really, it's just me. But this could be mum looking after the kids that spends 24/7 in the house, where the husband is out to work for 10 or 12 hours a day. So he's not exposed to any of these toxic values that comes from mould. So the work that's been being done is quite near to us. It hasn't been happening for a long time, and there's still a lot of work. So I was very fortunate. I got involved in this industry through being a body corporate chairman in Brisbane in
Yeah,
Admiralty
because I was
Towers.
going to ask you, like, how did you even get to this point of being involved with a product that was developed in the US for fruit and produce that has now been specifically used to target mold, and then now you've started Xspor Australia to now treat mold, which in the building industry has not been like a massive focal point until recently. I'd say a year and a half, 2 years ago, when it had 136 days of rain straight. I remember in our construction projects, we were dealing with that. And then obviously that's happened through, more, I guess, impact and focus on healthier living. I was talking to Zara Dakota just last month, and she has mold illness as well, very susceptible. But her doctor was a left field doctor in the fact that they did a full assessment of her living, all the homes, and that's how she came to it. So how did you get into Xspor Australia,
Right.
like to start that journey? So you mentioned just before you're in body corporate.
Body corporate in the floods in 2011 in Brisbane.
Right.
And with Admiralty Towers 1, like most of the buildings along the riverfront there had water up to at least ground level. So
Yes.
you've got 2, 3 or 4 basement levels there. They filled up with water, mud, silt and all types of problems. And we had a remediation company in there doing work. And as a body corporate chairman, I had 149 units that I needed to pretty well answer to, or the committee needed to answer to ensure things were right. And my background is electrical engineering. So I've got a bit of an eye to detail on a number of things that happened around buildings besides power points and lights and things like that. I've had a lot of exposure in the commercial and industrial area. So I was very concerned about what I was witnessing with the cleanup of those floods. So I went and talked to the actual assessor that assessed the building, that was then the person that got the remediators in there to do the work. And I just could not get answers to what they're doing. I couldn't understand what they're doing. There was horrific sort of smells and problems coming from chemicals that were being used to clean up, especially in the air ducting areas and that. And so I wasn't happy with what was going on at all there. So I was very fortunate that I knew one of these scientists dealing with them on a personal base, dealing with gut health.
Yeah.
And I just rang the scientist up and said, look, I need a hand to find out, what do you do in America in these flood type situations, being a bigger country. Obviously, they're probably a lot further in front than where we are, as are with a lot of things.
More natural disasters, more floods, hurricanes.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. So, and he said, "Oh, goddamn, Rogers," he said, "you should know that, I'm involved in all those types of areas." And I said, "Well, I didn't, Dr. Aaron." So from there, the conversation went on, and he told me what should be happening. But they then sponsored me to go over to Yale at Harvard and do a germicidal and microbial course where they were doing all their research.
Right.
Because Yale had bought up a huge amount of buildings in this particular area, but they couldn't use the bottom 1, 2, or 3 floors, and that. So to get the research done costs a lot of money. So Yale give them the areas to do the research, long as they could rectify the problems that were happening in their building.
Right.
And they. So they did that. They did their extra research, and Yale come out on top of that, because they ended up with something like another 3,000 square metres of floor space that they could use.
Right, because so Yale actually had an issue themselves
Yes.
in their own buildings,
Yes.
relating to mould ingress.
Yes, in the basement, lower ground basement type areas, which was a huge part of why they bought these buildings in the first place. So they bought them and then found they couldn't use a part of it because of that. So they were able to do the research, because it costs a lot of money, as people might understand, and that. So they were able to do the research there in order to be able to fix the problem.
Right.
Which, whilst they're doing the research, they were working on that with their remediators and fix their problem as well. So I got to be able to do my initial training under those guys. Then I spent a couple of months in America out on the road with the remediators, just seeing what the problems were that they had to attend to. So I then brought that back to Australia. In that is a product called EnzyCleanse, which is a natural plant-based product that they formulated these enzymes in there to attack the mould. So that's the sort of short story
Yeah.
of where that sort of come about. So I bought the product back thinking, well, I can sort out all our problems that
Like
we had
insurance,
health issue.
flood repair work, water
Yeah,
ingress, roofing
initially,
leaks. Yeah.
initially was for AT1, for Admiralty Towers,
Yep.
and that to do that. But then I thought, well, we've got this product, and that's so I will take it to the remediation industry. And I just hit a brick wall wherever I went for nearly 3 months. Nobody would ever believe that natural products, no matter how much scientific evidence I had, they just weren't there. So that's where I then decided. I was at a bit of a loose end at that stage because I'd sort of semi-retired, and I thought, well, what I'm going to do is just take this on side by side with the remediation industry, and set up licensees around Australia. I'd been in business all the way around Australia for 35 years, so I had a lot of really good contact. So I set up head licensees in each state, and then we put training programs together. We set up the administration side of that business to get people out there on the road doing what they do best, not sitting in behind a computer trying to work out how to build a website or
So
whatever.
essentially like addressing mold remediation in what comes across as a new way of doing it, but a more effective and actual effective way
Yes.
of getting rid of mold because it attacks the mold directly. Like, can you explain like the tree theory to me about mold? Like we talked about this with our carpentry team, like you came in
Right.
and spoke to our whole entire team. And I think it was very interesting to know because when people think, oh, I'll just get rid of mold or just wipe it off and bleach it and all the rest of it, can you just explain that,
Yes.
how the mold actually grows and that tree theory that you mentioned to our whole entire team?
Well, I think the tree theory is great. It's either the tree theory or like a lawn. So going back to the tree, you've got a tree growing out of the soil and whatever, you've got branches and leaves and everything on it. So really, that's what mould looks like. If you want to blow it up under electron microscope 100,000 times, that's exactly what you're looking at is a tree. So things like gyprock with which is cardboard, paper, and that mould loves that because it's got tons of protein in it. So the roots of the tree are embedded in that cardboard and eat into it and eventually destroy it if left and not attended to. So from there, what we see is the branches and the leaves of the trees. So when somebody in actual fact comes through and wipes over with a product, be it vinegar or a chemical or something like that, all they're doing is wiping the surface off, right? But the owner of the property is pretty happy because now they've got a clean wall, not understanding that left behind is the roots of the tree, which just continue to grow again. And that's where all our spores and mycotoxins and whatever toxic value comes out of those areas. So the biggest problem with using things like chemicals to clean off mould is the fact that chemicals lose their efficacy on impact. Right. So what we see pleases us because we've got a clean wall, still not understanding that the mould's still growing in there.
It's still in there, yep.
Right? And a lot of chemicals then, the major part of a chemical is water. So when you clean over, your chemical's lost its efficacy and just goes off into vapour and water's left there which feeds the plant. So it just starts to grow all over again.
But it looks nice for a week or two.
Yeah,
and the room smells nice for a week or two, but at the same time, it doesn't stop the actual flow. And as it grows back, there's more spores in the air. And I'd like to talk about air testing and what we've done with you around that, because that tree theory is really important. Because even from us, from a building perspective, when we do major renovations and we're removing everything inside a home, now it's been brought to our attention about, the information you've brought to our team, how we can look for it. Class 3, which is visible mold now, is now an actual responsibility of a builder in new construction to actually manage and maintain, coming in October 1st. So it's right at the forefront of the industry. In regards to, the spore count, Can you just define how people can understand what a healthy environment is from mold? Because mold's naturally in rainforests, it's external, but because it's in a confined space within a home, you're spending an extended amount of time within that home. That's the issue.
It is. And very important to understand why that's the issue. It's not the mould on the wall, the cornice, or in the cupboard that we see that is the problem. It's the spores or the mycotoxins that might be coming out. I don't want to overplay mycotoxins, but let's just talk about spores.
Yeah.
So it's those spores that come out. And it's some of the major areas that we come across in a home, for instance, say, is like a bathroom adjoined by a walk-in robe, then a bedroom next to it. So you have mould growing in your bathroom or your walk-in robe. Those spores penetrate out into the other rooms. And that, like, for instance, say, understanding the size of a spore, you can fit 10,000 spores on the sharp end of a pin. So they're very, very small.
And they just float through the structure.
And they float through the structure. Generally, they piggyback on dust.
Yeah.
And that's so if you've got a torch and on an angle and look through a room, you can see dust particles. So on those dust particles, you could have up to each particle, you could have up to 10,000 spores sitting on a particle. So of a daytime, of course, you get up, you go out of your bedroom, those spores float around, then they settle down on the bed, on the carpet, on your furniture, behind the furniture, etc. Now, it's only if the right conditions are met that they germinate, which could be in behind a cupboard or in behind a bed head, right? But the other problem is that they settle on the bed, as I said, and on the pillows. So when we go to bed of a night, we flop down on the bed and immediately, you can't see it, but immediately you've got a plume of dust that comes up, which is full of these spores. So we breathe that in. Then we plonk down and punch the pillow around a little bit to make it comfortable. And the same thing happens again. The next morning when you wake up, you've got this sinus problem, maybe itchy eyes, and you don't feel as macho as probably what you did 10 years ago. Topping. That's all brought on by these types of scenarios.
Right.
And people are not aware of it because you can't see it.
Yeah.
So as I say, what you see is not the problem, it's what you don't see,
Yeah.
I guess, is where the real problem is.
I couldn't agree more. Like, we were just at a project actually in Burleigh Heads, that 3-story home that had massive water ingress. You couldn't see anything on two of the levels. The lower level, we could see the water ingress, which is what we got actually brought in for. And then obviously I rang you straight away going, this has been sitting for a year with water ingress. And the results that came back from that was astronomical. Couldn't see mold in 95% of that house. Would you agree with that?
Yes, and in some of the worst areas.
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't see it. You could feel it when you walked through. I felt a little bit off when I left, but to define, we can't see it, but it's always there. In the right conditions, it germinates, which is obviously a bit of moisture and stagnant air and not enough ventilation. Bathrooms and walk-in robes, I feel, are the worst designed one when you walk through the walk-in robe to the bathroom or when they're adjoining on doorways, because bathroom and kitchens, highest moisture, especially laundries, highest moisture content area in a whole entire home. Can you define, like, if you can't see it and people are unsure, what are some options to understand if everything looks fine, but you got an inkling that something just isn't right? What are some of the ways that you can do it? Obviously, starting with obviously starting with like an air test.
Yeah, right. Well, the first thing is that generally humans can actually smell a musty smell or a mold type smell in a place.
Yeah.
Right. The trouble is with humans, you get used to things very quick.
Yes.
So as you get used to that, the mold grows, you get used to it and whatever. So you could have somebody living in a property and you walk in through the door and go, holy hell, there's mold here. It's really bad.
Yeah.
And they say, what are you talking about? Because they've got used to it.
Sort of like the crab in the pot scenario, right? As it gets hotter, you still get used to it. You get used to it. You deal with whatever's coming on. But because you're constantly in that environment, it's changing so slowly.
So I think the ways that you start to tell as a person is itchy skin, sort of itchy eyes, runny eyes, nasally where you never used to be, the other things, and generally not feeling well, right? Waking up of a morning and not bouncing out of bed, you're a little bit slower than what you know. I'm not saying that's all to do with mould, but it can be a large part of where you've got the mould problem. So There's 25% of properties in Australia that we're aware on the last census that we did that have got mould, right,
Mm.
across the board. 80% of that 25% is not visible.
Yeah.
So therefore, you've got to resort to some other form. Your nose is the best, like we just talked about, with that musty type smell, but you get used to it. And that's so going to, as we've done on some of your sites, is doing air testing, right? So that then goes off to a laboratory and goes in an ajar plate and they culture the actual mould. So out of that, we can get to see what type of mould it is. And if we know what type of mould it is, we know whether it comes from rotting wood or water or other means and whatever. So a safe level of mould in that environment and what we call a condition 1 is around about 1,000 spores or under per square metre.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you define for us and everyone listening, what are the brackets of the spore counts and
Right.
from an air test? Because we've done 6 with you
Mm.
and every single one has been above
Yes.
the actual, which is the standard me as a
Yeah.
builder. But can you explain those brackets?
Yeah, well, we as far as mould goes, we look at levels called conditions. So condition 1 to a condition 3,
Yeah.
and this is just a rough guide on that. As I say, that up to about that 1,000, 1,200 mark, you're looking at, you know, a condition 1, which is something you've got to be aware of. It might not be affecting you health wise or whatever, but be aware that if that starts to grow, there could be a problem.
Mm.
If we start to look at something in the area of that 1,500 to 3,000 mark spores per square metre, we're then looking at a condition 2. That's telling us there is a problem here that's got to be attended to, right?
Yeah.
Then we go to a condition 3, which is 3,500 spores or above, and that's really uninhabitable, right? So people shouldn't be living in that type of environment. And that's where you've got to take action straight away. So normally with the industry's very busy. Just because you've done an air count and found out what condition level you're at, you can't just drop everything and move into that place. So
Mm.
we have methods of being able to look after that through other products just to cleanse the air for a period of time in order for people to be able to get that remediation sorted out properly and done. And you mentioned the house that had the large spore count for all
I remember, I
all
remember
your-
you calling me
oh,
2 or 3 times. It was just before an event, and then you got
Yeah.
onto my brother, and you said people got to exit that house because the lab results, they were the highest they'd ever seen.
It was the highest that had gone through the particular lab, and they were sitting at, I think, somewhere like 970 something thousand spores per square metre.
Just under a million.
And we're talking about the safe level being down around that 1,000 mark. So, and the worst count of that was that it was one of the worst moulds, which comes from water ingress through building materials and bricks and things like that. So that was Stachybotrys, and that's the worst that you can have. That lets off lots of toxic value and whatever, and can make you very, very ill.
So we talked about like the test. We've done a number with you. The lowest was 27,000 at a major renovation in the master bedroom and walk-in robe right next to an ensuite. The most recent one was just under a million, which is scary for everybody, which we're going to have to remediate. People will probably be listening to this going, okay, so you know there's mold there, you know there's an issue with the structure. What next? How can you remediate it? And I know that I asked you this question going, well, if I'm sending my carpentry team in to do construction work, what's the first step so my team's safe? Because we're now treating it as if asbestos and mold are the same thing, same sort of concerns and I guess procedures to deal with it. Can you explain that process? Say if you are about to start construction or you have an issue, what's that first option and solution that's there to be able to address that issue?
Well, obviously, what we've got to do once we've taken those air tests and we know the level of the contamination, sets up different means of being able to remediate. But the most common way to do that is a mitigation process to allow your workers on site. And I must sort of commend you, Tim, because your company is one of the first companies we've dealt with and that I'm aware of that has actually taken the steps to do this type of thing in properties you're working on and look after your staff. I mean, your staff is what the first thing is what you should be looking after, because they're the people that keep this company going. So I do commend you on taking the steps you have to
No, I
ensure
appreciate that, Graham.
that this happens. So the mitigation process could be the fact that we go in and we use this enzyme-based product, EnzyCleanse, and we go in and we fog the areas of concern, right? So that then cleanses the air. It then gets into the surfaces and starts to eliminate the mould, right? So at that stage there, that allows you a safe passage. But I would always, as you do with your guys anyway, always recommend at any time that you should be wearing masks, right? At the least a minimum of a mask in an N95, not the COVID type masks that we use because they let everything through anyway.
Yeah.
So it's got to be a minimum of that, if not more, a professional mask for these people.
Yeah.
We work on there for that protection, because you're then going to go in and open up walls. You're going to take down.
The bash in the wall like you are on your pillow, just at a mass scale sort of thing.
Right. And you've just got spores still everywhere. So part of the mitigation process is maybe even doing HEPA vaccing. If it's a really bad area, we would HEPA vac down the actual walls but then work with you as you start to open up that building to further investigate how bad it is in order to be able to mitigate more where it's necessary. And I think give you a safe working environment.
100%. And I think we've done that as well on 2 renovations now to date, where we've got it mitigated the whole entire house. There was actually 3 main areas in this 800 square meter home. Mitigated that area, stripped it out before we resheeted that whole entire place, including the new extension. Even though it didn't get rained on, your team came in and actually treated the frame before the gyprock came back
on. I think that's a really important step, right?
Yeah.
Is the fact that you're going to get in there, because what we're doing at the end of the day, with the whatever the wall panelling is that's going on, we'll call it gyprock for the sake of this conversation. You're then, when we've mitigated, you're then sandwiching that in the wall. So that is going to give a long-lasting effect, because we know the enzymes that have got a minimum of 2 years, that they will settle in and look for any type of new mould growth. Because as much as you get rid of mould, you can have ingress through other means. So it will attack anything that comes in there. So it's a very important step that actually happens.
Would you say, like, mold ingress over the life of a building? Say you build a home, or say we build a home, we use ProClimber, we have different ways of doing building method to make sure that the water ingress is reduced to an absolute minimum, but still allows the structure to breathe, actually let the vapor go through that, not contain it. So it becomes like this condensation hot house.
Yes.
Where would they come from? Would it be like outside environment that brings the mold spores in, or would it be like just the steam and that within en suites and kitchen areas that promote that growth for maybe other things like that?
Well,
like if it's a treated
you hit
frame.
all the points on the head there.
Okay.
Number one is that the mold spores, our environment outside is full of mold.
Right.
But because of the wide open spaces, it doesn't affect us too much.
Yeah.
The wind blows around, it's not there. As you'd said earlier, when it becomes contained in a space, it's a problem. Then give it the right environment, bit of steam, a bit of moisture, darkness and whatever, and the mould starts to germinate and grow. So generally you will find, and it's just not coming in through your doors and windows, we're carting it in. We've been out in the park with the kids or whatever for a picnic, and that was sitting on the ground. There's mould spores in the environment. We're then carting that into the home. So, in some places in the world, we do know you can't wear shoes in the home. There's a good reason for that. It's hygiene.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not saying everybody's got to kick off their shoes at the front door and whatever. That's everybody's personal choice. But just be aware that if you are walking around out, maybe you've just even gone for a jog for health reasons or whatever, and you walk back in that place, and especially if you've got rugs or carpets or things like that in there, then you're carrying those contaminants in there. Now, I don't know what the stats are on how many people have dogs and cats and whatever as the pets of the family and whatever, but we've got to also, they go outside, they run around the yard, the park and whatever, and they're carting in spores as well, and all types of doggy dander and cat dander, whatever it might be. So there's a whole lot of intrusive ways that can be a part of that property. So there are means and ways that you can remediate for that as an ongoing basis. And it's one of the things that we're starting to get into now is the fact of the education about mould, knowing how to air your home out correctly, right? And there is a means and a way. And then I quite often say to people, well, you know, everybody can put a sail up in a yacht, but how do you point it so it makes it go in a direction?
Would you be able to touch on that? Like, because people are like, well, we're bringing all these mold spores in, etc., and it obviously comes down to the environment and the right conditions. But if you wanted to sort of reset your home from that and being able to air that out, what are some key points that you could recommend for people to start looking at?
I think the first thing to understand is where is the windward side of the property? In other words, where does the most 80% of the breeze come from? And the reason for that is because that allows you to know if you're going to open on the windward side, let's say we're going to open up a window there, that on the opposite end of the home, you need to be able to open up a aperture that's twice as big as the one you opened up on the windward side.
Right.
The idea of that is to create a draft. If you did the opposite, you'll still get breeze come in, you get a draft for a while, but it backfills and pressurises the place. So things still come in, but they stay in there. So what we want to do is flush it out all the time.
So smaller opening on the windward side.
Yep.
And a twice the size opening on the other side, so that wind actually gets pulled through the home.
Yeah. So we don't always have that really good setup to do that, unfortunately, but you can manage it. The other side of that, then, if we've got other rooms, you just crack the windows in other rooms. You don't open them wide up,
and
right?
just pulls it through.
And that, with that thrust of air going through, it then airs the rooms as well.
I remember when I was traveling in Greece, they were like every single afternoon, before the siesta or after the siesta, I can't remember. They used to air out the whole entire house, like daily.
Yep.
What would you recommend for people in Australia?
Look, to move forward and do your progressive maintenance on a home to stop mould and that. This airing situation is a big thing, amongst other things that we can touch on. But just ventilation is what it's all about, not this business of closing the windows up and just turning fans on, even though that is good because that does pressurise the home and stops things coming in through around the door sills, window sills and places like that. So from there, and dust levels, serious. I've talked about dust earlier today, and mould uses the dust and takes a ride around the place. So with that in mind, you know, you need to be able to keep your dust levels down all the time. And you can quite often, everybody's generally very house proud of their home, but they don't understand the cleaning totally. It's not so much the wide open space of the floor that needs to be cleaned. It's that area that's around 25, 30 mil next to the actual, around the bottom of the wall and on the skirtings, and that where the dust collects on all those places, on the backs of paintings and things like that. That's where you get your mould growths all coming in on, because those types of areas generally a little bit darker. They attract a little bit more, a bit of moisture as well. And that's when you're going to get mould growth. So it starts there. Given with carpet in like a shower, walk-in robe, bedroom scenario, if you've got carpet in your bedroom, is carting water out of the bathroom onto the carpet.
Just watering everything.
Yeah,
essentially.
Well, the problem with the carpet, where that actually generally starts with, is the product called Smooth Edge, that they actually holds the carpet down. Now,
actually,
that's a raw wood.
We saw that. It's a raw wood. It's like just a buffet.
Yes.
For mould. And same with the underlay. So I remember when I was chatting to Zara Dakota, she was saying that she had water ingress in a balcony of the house that she's living in, and she had to pull the carpet up to dry the underlay because that's where it was actually growing, and the smooth edge, not so much the actual top of the carpet, because the carpet felt dry. Yeah. But then underneath it was just completely sopping wet.
Yeah, it is. And that the hessian that backs on carpet on a lot of the time. I mean, mould just grow. And there's a particular type of mould that grows in carpet without water ingress that people are not very much aware of.
Oh, there you go.
So I think you've got to be very, very cautious all the time. To me, I think the less carpet that we have in a house, the better.
Okay.
Right? Good quality tiles, and if you need scatter rugs or whatever to sort of add the beauty to it, or whatever your touch is, that would be the way to go.
There you go. So hard surface floors.
Most definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's a few people around that, building biologists as well, that would back that up 100% in regards to like the amount of dust that it carries per year per square meter. I think it was a kilo per year annually that you just can't get out.
So so the next thing to the carpets, and probably the worst thing of all, is air conditioning.
Yeah.
Right, because air conditioners by nature on their evaporators in there are wet because of what they do, because they're cooling the place down. Generally, they are used for heating, but cooling down is what we probably majorly use them for. And to me, an air conditioner is just like a big vacuum cleaner in the room. So it's throwing out air, circulating the air, coming back in. So it's picking up bacteria, spores, dust, hair, lint, you name it, goes onto those air conditioners. And I can tell you, if some people looked in their air conditioners, they would be sick. Because people haven't understood that you need to actually maintain these on a 12 monthly base and professionally maintain them. This is not about just taking the filters out the front and giving them a bit of a wipe or a wash and putting them back in. That's the least of the problem. It's actually the evaporator coils in the unit and the tumbler fan that delivers the air across those. So they've got to be flushed out correctly and cleaned. And we have products that we put in there to try and keep the germicidal and bacteria and microbial levels down, little gels that go in there that are TGA approved that look after those coils. So they still might get dirty, but you're not going to have the mould level growth or any germicidal problems. And they're Australian made products, which, we're all for batting for Australia and there's a scientist in Gosford that makes all these products, and they're just absolutely brilliant.
That's awesome. From your experience with Xspor Australia and what you've been doing over the last couple of years, what do you think the building industry needs to embrace a bit more of? Like, you see from your side of it, looking at the industry and, the consumer being more and more aware of mold and wanting to address it. We like to do it collaboratively with our clients, obviously, as much as we can, and educate ourselves. But what do you see as some of the biggest shifts that can help people building their new home to start the conversation with their builder or their developer and the contractor around
Well, I think the first place is, and we're trying to do a fair bit of work down this side, is educating the builders, because the builders are not educated. They're really good at what they do with their job, with the architectural side, with materials, products they use, but they're not aware of the scientific facts of what mould is all about. And as I say, you're a leader in your company with what you're doing. So I think building companies, for starters, have got to take up this education. We do run educational workshops for people that are interested and want to do that, and we're contacting them all the time. And from there, we've also got a lot of education online, and we're very happy to talk to community groups or whatever and expose what we have, a little bit like we come into your life 6-9 months ago, and showed your work as what it's about, and it was amazing. The reaction from the guys, just had no idea. Most people don't until you expose them to it.
And the interesting thing is, like, some of the carpenters, like our lead carpenters, they got 40 years in the industry, in the construction industry, and the young guys are just like going, wow, this is an actual thing. And because of the type of work that we do in one part of the business alongside new homes is also important for us to understand how we can mitigate water ingress, or how we build. If the frame gets rained on, we dry it out, but then obviously we treat it too, because drying out a frame, which is a main industry repair for water and flood ingress, doesn't solve the problem. It just slows down the growth.
Slows
essentially.
down. Yeah. So as you say, sort of drying out the frames and whatever but it's got to come down to a level through what we know, being able to measure that by moisture content. And we can get down to a level that's serviceable. And then when we've got to that level and got the water to a minimum to where we need to be, we can then actually remediate and do what needs to happen. There's a whole lot of different types of products on the market. There's a particular product called an IAQ 6000, which is like a paint, and that's a very good sealer against things like any germicidal or microbial action that's in timbers. And we use that a lot where we've got a bottom plate sitting on a floor. Of course, you can't lift them up and sweep under or vacuum under them. They're screwed or glued or whatever down. So we've got to be able to use products like that. So we fog first, with the level that we fog at that 6 micron level. That allows the enzymes to get into those areas. Then we doubly sure go over and paint the IOQ product on there to really look after the future, and that gets rid of the problem.
Yeah,
but
amazing.
we've also now got a problem called colloidal silica, which we fog on. So I think it's one of the jobs that you're doing. We're probably doing that as a finishing exercise.
So we're actually going to do that at handover, because the client's journey was like, when they moved into it, started getting a little bit sick, didn't actually fully link it up. And then obviously through the process of renovation, and then you coming in, mitigating it, the education around it, even washed all the clothes, that made a massive difference. And when it got taken out of that situation to now treating the whole entire house as frame that we stripped out, and then also right at the end, handing over the home, that's actually, we clean it with builders clean, we clean everything, but then treating the surfaces of the high moisture areas in the home to reduce that, especially the walk-in robe.
Yes.
To reduce that. I'm really looking forward to that, actually.
Yeah, well, you see, once again, the only thing that was available at one time was chemicals to go through and do that process that you're talking about. But once again, chemicals lose their efficacy on contact or within minutes of contact. So therefore, it did the great job right then, but now it's all exposed again.
Right.
So this colloidal silica we're talking about makes up 52% of the Earth's crust. So we actually eat this product in our foods, potatoes, carrots, etc., and we drink it in our water. So this gets sprayed onto the surface or fogged onto the surface, and in doing that, it sets up like a crystalline false surface, which is really powerful, really tough. And even with a razor blade, it's very, very hard to scrape that product off. Now, what that does, if there are any germicidal problems, bacteria problems, spores that come in, as soon as they roll onto that surface, it does what they call a mechanical kill rather than a germicidal kill. Right. So it's a lot safer for people to have something like that on there. And we're just getting to the point now where we're starting to do preventative maintenance in a lot of homes, places in Queensland, like up in Tamborine, Montville. We're just starting up into the tablelands in Cairns and whatever, where we're putting this product on to stop those types of growths happening there. So
because those areas they have constant high humidity. I know when we're building, especially in the Gold Coast hinterland from Currumbin to Mount Tamborine, in sort of that gamut and those two valleys, it constantly feels wet.
Yes.
Regardless of whether it's sunny or not, it always just feels like there's a lot of moisture because of rainforest, essentially.
That's right. And you're looking at your humidity levels on average there about 86%.
Yeah, the boys can attest to that because they're always sweating 100%.
Yeah. So having this product on there is going to eliminate the growth of any sort of mold. But the other side of it is thinking about the germicidal side as well. I mean, that's a big problem. Germs and bacteria in homes, people are not aware that they've got them. So, it's a multifunctional product and does a really good job. Does not change the look of anything. You can put it on your clothes, you can put it on walls, ceilings, in cupboards and whatever, and it services to
once it's clean.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Once it's clean,
always clean. Yeah,
clean first, and then.
And the beauty of it is you can clean over the top of this. It has no effect, so it doesn't mean you put that on, you don't have to do any more cleaning, right? Yes,
still
the cleaning is still got to be there and whatever, but this product will stay there. If there's high touch areas, like in a commercial scene using a product like that, like door handles or push panels on doors and things like that, then you would do a touch up on that in between. But this product generally will sit in there and be there for 4 to 6 months without a problem. On a ceiling, corners type area, it's going to service at least 12 months. So I think what people are probably starting to get the picture to is the fact that we can remediate mould unless it's been there that long, it's destroyed the timbers, the gyprocs and whatever. So we can remediate in probably 90+% of instances. But then it's on them to do the maintenance. And that's the thing that we see, and I'm sure you come across as well, where people are not aware that a building is a living thing. And a building
100%.
needs maintenance,
Yeah.
right? Around your windows, your sills, your door frames, all of these things need to be looked at on a constant base. And I said day after day after day, where we go out to assess premises, these things have not been done. It rains on a window, the water runs down, the sill is broken, it goes in the walls. You've got there's the visible mould in the cavity. So yeah. So maintenance is a big thing, and that's why we're going down that education process. And the more we can get in front of people and talk about these things, the more we will do it.
I think that's super valuable. I know it's been jam packed, and people are probably I'm probably gonna have to listen back and just all the things. And we've been working together for the 6 to 9 month mark with the team, and we've incorporated your process and your service with every single major renovation. And I'm just gobsmacked every single time. It is more than the class 1 or stage 1 of it.
Yes.
By far, tenfold.
Yeah.
And so I guess for the takeaways today that I have is this has started from, preserving food produce to now a natural product with no nasty chemicals really, because a natural enzyme that's actually just targeting the mold specific. It's not just a wipe all, it'll clean everything scenario.
No, with these enzymes, Tim, that's what, to understand about an enzyme, that's what all plants have inside them to protect themselves.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't have any greenery outside. True. So this is what that natural process is all about.
And I think that's fantastic that if you do have a mold issue in your home or your house has been rained on during construction, that there is a solution for the builder or the homeowner to mitigate an existing structure or protect a new building from becoming a problem when it's finished, and then to maintain that long term by simple things like airing out your house, making sure where the water stays in your bathroom stays there, cleaning, and that there are options to protect the surfaces long term. I think it's really good.
And having the right type of air conditioners in the place. Most air conditioners that come out now have got a dry cycle on them.
Yep.
A lot of people don't realise that's actually a dehumidifier.
Yes.
Right? So you can run those, and the power side of things running air conditioners these days is not over the top, so it's not expensive as a lot of people think. I've walked into houses and I've seen people with ceiling fans, and they don't use them because they think they consume too much power. Well, a ceiling fan uses less power than a LED light. In most instances.
Yeah.
And so just running them on a low speed is just enough to keep these things and keep the place being aired, and that's so damn important.
Well, I think that's such valuable advice, Graeme. Thank you so much for taking the time out to just scrape the itty bitty service of mold and what it can do. But the main thing that I want everyone listening to remember is it can be solved. There is a solution, and the long-term future solution is building better homes with better build methods, with that health aspect in mind, to increase the breathability of a structure, to prevent condensation and mold within a building that ends up to what you see every day.
Yes.
So if you're doing a bathroom renovation DIY, you're doing a kitchen renovation, you're building a new home, look out for these things, because this is where we at Kai Konstruct see all the time. And I just really appreciate you taking the time out to explain it.
Tim, I think just on that point there, for just got a minute, we haven't touched on, talking about bathrooms, laundries and whatever in homes.
Yes.
98% of those that I come across don't have the right type of exhaust fans in them, right?
Ventilation in structures. I'm glad you raised that, because we actually get them designed and sized up for the room.
Yep, and that's exactly where you've got to be. But the next big step there is you don't ventilate into the cavity, into the ceiling space. They should be vented directly outside.
I believe that's become National Construction Code standard last year, but I can tell, and I know from your comment, that what I've seen in the industry when I was doing building inspecting, project management, and then doing our own company with renovations, there are still plenty that are just jacked up into the ceiling, creating massive issues.
People don't realise that the hot air, steam or whatever gets sucked in there. They hit the roofing materials, whether it's Colorbond or tiles, it condenses and falls back down on the dust and into the insulation. You immediately got mould growth.
Well, there you go.
Right. So, and laundries, I've got to tell you, 98% of laundries don't even have an exhaust fan.
Yeah. So if you don't have a condenser dryer and it's a standard dryer and you don't have exhaust or it's vented outside, we actually changed ours over personally to a condenser one. because there's just constant condensation inside, which is a massive, massive red
Yes,
flag.
yes. Well, a lot of people I come across in laundries, they say, "Oh, we sort that out. We open the door, and that airs the room out." But have a guess where all that hot air goes to? Right inside, because in most cases that laundry door is on the windward side, and it just blows back into the house. So
Well, there you
it's
go.
self-defeating.
Lots of things to consider.
There
Graham,
are.
we're going to put a link to Xspor Australia and all the different products that you offer around that. I encourage people to reach out if you have an inkling. If you're a builder in the industry listening to this and you want to actually empower your team and help your clients further, reach out to Graham. He's a wealth of knowledge. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tim.